Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Community Steel. I am your host, the Mighty Bjorn, and today we are kicking off the 30th episode of Community Steel with a tank from Diamond Lime, and this is his M6. The M6 heavy tank, actually one of my favorite heavy tanks in World of Tanks. Even though a lot of people actually shit on it, I feel it performs actually pretty well. And this weighs in at 39.42 tons. It is armed with the 76 millimeter gun, and it's got 113.5 millimeters of penetration for the early war period. So it's, in general terms, pretty effective as long as you're not being old and shit like myself. And that being said, even though it is actually pretty effective armor-wise, it is still actually quite mobile. So he kept it really true to the spirit of the World of Tanks M6 in itself. And of the 4 or 5 different M6s I've seen people build so far, this is honestly, in my opinion, the very best rendition I have seen yet of the M6. I mean, he really got it down pat with just how the general vehicle looks and feels. So just definitely knocked it out of the ballpark. Going to take some pot shots here at the Matilda. Now, that being said, this is quite a thick tank. Oh, we got another one. There we go. Got a free shot there. I must have decided that Matilda was dead, which that Matilda still would be a tough nut to crack for the M6. But that tank in general is a tough nut to crack in the early war period. Okay, let's move on. This is the M16C3 T3 by Delta Kimura, and this is his 17-ton mid-war era light tank. Feels very reminiscent to something like a Stuart, although probably even smaller, more compact than a Stuart, really. And it is armed with a 50 millimeter main gun, and it's got 89.2 millimeters of penetration. And as you can see here, the mobility of this thing is actually really good. I mean, it just goes. It's actually ridiculous how fast it is, in my opinion. But hey, when you're driving a light tank, speed is the key, my man. As you can see here, it's going pretty good across the terrain. The gun actually performs rather well too. Not sure really too much of how much of that I show here, but I will show you some of the gun performance here. Although unfortunately there I got pegged by an M22 Locust before I could get a shot off. Yeah, the M22 Locust, another mid-war vehicle that performs really well in my arsenal of vehicles that will spawn against me. I almost pegged him right there. There we go, got him. As you can see here, for that 50 millimeter gun, having to reload that fast, that's pretty crazy. There we go, pegged another one. So, I mean, we're just taking pot shots left and right here with the 50 millimeter main gun. And as you can see, it is performing pretty well. It's got a rather flat trajectory, at least for this range of engagement, which is always a bonus. It actually helps increase the accuracy and how effective you're going to be with the gun, with having a more flat trajectory, and also having a fast reload too, so you can quickly adjust your gun and re-engage with your missed shot. Does make a big difference, in my opinion. You know, there we go, got another M22 Locust racked up on the scoreboard there. Well, let's move on to the next vehicle, and here we got one from German Train. This is the SD KFZ 234-2, aka the Puma, and this is from German Train. It weighs in at 9 tons and also has a 50 millimeter main gun. It is thin armored but very mobile for a wheeled vehicle. It actually drives, this is one of the nicer wheeled vehicles I have driven in Sprocket here. Not saying it's the fastest or the slowest, it's just the way that it drives felt nice when I was driving it. That being said, it is thin armored, so pretty much anything that sneezes at this thing is going to destroy it. Now, it does take a little bit when you're first accelerating to get her up and get going, But once it really gets up and goes, it just goes. So it's definitely really good in the realm of acting as a tank destroyer and a light reconnaissance vehicle. And I forgot to mention too that this is for the mid-war period. So pretty good lineup there on when the Puma would actually be in production. And hopefully we'll be able to get some more variants of this soon. You know, basically there's actually 4 different variants on the Puma chassis, but they're all kind of drastically different on how the chassis was worked with. You know, you got 2 different models that used a gun shield. You got another model that used a turret like this, but it had a basket with a 20mm autocannon. So, I mean, it's kind of stuff we really can't quite do yet in Sprocket, but I look forward to seeing future variants of this vehicle in Sprocket. The next vehicle we have here is from Nathan the Dummy, and this is his 49-ton M58A1 E3. Feels very reminiscent of like an M48 Patton, and it has a 90mm main gun. The armor's kind of meh. It's kind of it's kind of mediocre, but it does work even with how shaped it is. For some odd reason, I was getting some penetrating hits I wasn't expecting. That being said, the 90mm main gun does actually perform rather well, at least when you're not being me. And it is the late war period is what it's set for. And it's actually a rather good rendition. It feels, like I said, it feels very reminiscent of an M48 Patton. Especially the earlier M48 Pattons. It's got the flat engine deck instead of the raised engine deck for the diesel engine. You know, talking like the M48A1 where it's got the petrol engine. And of course the AI right now is being completely useless by driving into a tree. But yeah, as you can see here, the armor's just not holding up. I was actually really quite surprised about that. You know, it just, yeah. You know, especially because it's getting shot on the turret where the armor is most rounded shaped. But either ways, it's, you know, it's a good looking vehicle, and I'll give credit for that. Okay, the next vehicle we have here is the AMX 5100 from Praxis. And this weighs in at 41 tons. It is a French heavy tank. And it's actually got the oscillating turret. The oscillating turret, to me, is like spot on. Really good job on the oscillating turret, mate. And it's got a 100mm main gun with 214mm of penetration. It is also very mobile for being a heavy tank, but of course, like most French tanks, it lacks armor. Even with how the armor is shaped, this does get penetrated by most of the vehicles that I currently have in my game as spawnable vehicles. So it just does not withstand the abuse. Kind of expected that because French. That being said, this is set up for the late war, and it's like I said, it maneuvers around actually really good. You know, it feels along the lines of like a medium tank or even like a lighter range medium tank with how mobile it is. So definitely really good mobility and just general overall good modeling of the vehicle. Unfortunately, we just don't have autoloaders yet. That would really set this thing off the chain. Okay, the next vehicle here is the T26 from Generic Pub, and it weighs in at 9 tons, and it has a 45mm main gun. This is for the early war period. You know, just what you need to go Sukhoblet with Russian vehicles. I guess that's what this is. It is a Russian vehicle. And it's actually a really good rendition of the T26. I've seen some earlier renditions that really weren't bad, but this is the most modern and definitely so far the best rendition of the T26. Even modeled the engine deck to how it should properly look. So I'll definitely have to tip my hat off to Generic Pub there on just the general overall look and feel of this vehicle. That being said, I am not going to sit here and actually say it's a good vehicle. Now, it is a good vehicle in the sense that Generic Pub did a really good job on the vehicle, but, you know, it's a T26, so overall, historically speaking, the T26 is nothing I'd write home to mom about when it comes to how vehicles performed during World War II, although this one kind of, yeah, this one's actually kind of a turd, at least historically speaking, but it was cheap. So we'll give that to the Russians. And besides the Russian vehicles and generic pub, we have his SU-85. And this weighs in at 30 tons. It has a 85 millimeter gun, 147.6 millimeters of penetration. It is a turretless design, as you can see here. Of course, the SU-86 was. And this is for the late war period. And damn, this thing is mobile. Like, it feels like light tank mobility. And his armor actually does hold up to some abuse as well. I don't think it's anything that the armor's crazy super thick, but with how well angled it is, it does actually a pretty good job at bouncing shots. And when it comes to the cannon, well, the cannon practically shits on everything that it sees. It's kind of one of those things. This 85 millimeter gun is not like the ultimate gun or anything like that, but it does perform very well for the task at hand. You know, it has no problems dealing with the Tiger. Now, the Tiger 2, it's going to have a bit of problem with based on where you're shooting it, but the Cane Tiger's got a bit more armor. It deals with Shermans, no problem. Deals with the M6, no problem. KV-1, KV-2, all those kind of vehicles. You know, there are certain vehicles that will be a dog against because, well, those vehicles were just notoriously good when it came to its armor package, such as like the IS-3. Even the IS-2 actually does pretty well defensively against this vehicle. But yeah, none of those vehicles also share the mobility that this thing does. So generic pub with the SU-85, really good job here, looks really good. Anyway, folks, that's going to wrap up today's Community Steel episode. Hopefully you all enjoyed it. Thank you very much for tuning in, and have yourself a wonderful day.